Hunters of Reddit, what did you see out there that made you not want to go back into the woods? Mountain lion screams can be pretty damn sobering. The first time I heard one I thought it was some kind of person just screeching while getting closer to the campsite. Never did I have more faith in tent nylon as protection. Hunting in Maine in the fall after the January 4, 1998 ice storm. I got caught in a windstorm and trees were randomly exploding and falling. It was like a scene from a war movie. Edit to explain that the trees were weakened, cracked by the ice storm. Not hunting but out with my grandpa looking for a spot for his tree stand. I was walking behind him when a dark ball dropped on him from above and started making an awful squealing noise. Then my grandpa, the toughest man I know, started screaming and trying to throw it off. Turns out it was a mink. He walked away unscathed and laughing while I was totally horrified. Not in the woods but underwater. I was spear fishing at night with a pretty powerful flashlight when out of the dark came this foot-long snake-looking thing. Almost gave me a heart attack. Turned out to be a ragworm swimming towards my face. A couple of minutes later, another one came swimming at me. 10 minutes later the water was full of these long suckers all around me in the dark. Creeped me out. Turned out it was mating season, which makes them leave their holes in the sand, swimming up to release their sperm by destroying their bodies, dying in the process. Torchlight must have been drawing them out as if it was the full moon or something. I'll be checking for ragworm mating season every time I'm planning to go spear fishing. Edit, people have been asking why I spear fish at night. Species are the same, trout, flatfish etc., but they're closer to the shore and more relaxed at night. In some countries too many people take advantage of the fact that it's a bit easier to take the fish in the dark. This has led to spear fishers getting bad reputation. In many countries spear fishing at night is illegal. So will it be in all of EU this year, because some spear fishers without moral are taking too many fish in southern Europe. It's sad to see the sport being ruined by people just wanting money, not caring for nature. I only take the fish I can eat for myself and my family, if I find any at all. So should anybody else. It's important to take care of the nature. Be responsible. I hunt the desert more than the woods, but one thing that always freaks me out is when my spidey is telling me I'm being tracked. It gets worse when I start seeing fresh cougar tracks crossing in front of my direction of travel. Luckily I've never had to shoot one out of fear. I think they're beautiful animals, but my God, is it a reminder that we weren't always at the top of the food chain. One time while bow hunting in a tree stand I had 3 bears walk under my stand right before dark, so when I was ready to leave the stand I yelled at the bears. One of the baby bears climbed up the double tree I was in and was looking down and chomping its teeth at me. I was afraid to leave the stand because the large mama bear was somewhere on the ground in the dark. I was hunting deer alone and shot a buck from much longer range than I should have. It looked like it was badly wounded, but it managed to run away. I gave chase, and for most of that while it was out of my sight. After a mile or so of running I caught sight of the buck a couple hundred feet away. The animal was not moving and had been finished off by another hunter. That person was at the buck's rear end and looked like he was humping it. I didn't even consider getting a closer look at that point. I might have had a legitimate claim to part of the buck's corpse, but claiming the meat was the last thing on my mind. I bolted out of there faster than I could have managed while chasing after it, praying the whole time he didn't notice me. As long as there's crazy deer humpers in the woods, I'm not going back there. While I do hunt, I haven't seen anything while actually hunting that made me not want to go back into the woods. Hiking and mountain biking though, I've come across some end times survivalist types, either a meth lab or a moonshine. Still, I didn't stick around long enough to properly identify the structure, and an illicit weed growing operation. I go walking in the woods near my place and 3 terrifying things have happened, and every single one was in the same section of trail. The first was one of the earliest times I went walking. I wasn't entirely sure of my timing to get to the opposite end of the woods and back, and I ended up walking 2/3 RDs of the way back in the dark. I had a flashlight which I could use part of the time, but wasn't able to leave on. I would flash it on, set my course, and walk until I felt I needed to check again. I'm walking through the pitch dark, and I hear something about 50 yards back scream. It scared the shit out of me. I picked up my pace a bit when suddenly whatever it was screamed again. About 15 feet away at my 11 o'clock. I hadn't heard anything move and I booked it. I leaned later that it may have been foxes, but I never went walking out there again without a means of self-defense. The second time was an late afternoon walk. Same spot on the trail, I was walking and it was almost Disney-like. Birds singing, bugs chirping, squirrels squirreling. There was a small breeze and it was lovely out. Suddenly, at the exact same time, the wind stopped, the sun dropped behind a cloud, and every single animal stopped doing anything. The entire woods went completely still and silent. I had never understood deafening silence until that moment. I tensed up and kept moving, and about 10 seconds later, sound returned and everything went back to normal. I took the same way back and it didn't happen again. The third time was about a month later. I was walking down that way and I was looking about a little more, as this time I was out at midday and it was as bright as deep woods gets. I noticed something off the trail and went to look at it. I found a deer trail that I could follow and realized that the high grass hid a deep ditch off that trail that the river cut out during flooding. It had been dry, so I dropped into it. I'm a big dude at about 6.5 feet tall, and the edge of this ditch was at my eye level and probably about 10 feet across. I decided to follow it and come out at the river and then work my way down the bank until I hit the trail again. I walked about 25 feet and had to work over a tree that had collapsed into the ditch at a curve in its path. I came to the other side and froze. There was deer everywhere. Not plural deer, a single deer spread over the entirety of the ditch. The ribs were closest, the skull was across the ditch from him, and all the other bones were scattered about like it had hit a landmine. There was a definite stench to the area and the bones were dry but still had sinew strung about them in spots. It took me all of about 3 seconds to realize that I was standing in something's dining room. I backed up to the tree, used it as my point of egress from the ditch and, ignoring the voice in my head saying not to bust straight through the underbrush to the path, busted straight through the underbrush to the path. I came out at, you guessed it, that creepy spot on the woods trail. I walked swiftly to a different trail, and walked through the open field to get home. I don't know precisely what lives in that section of the woods, but it always freaks me out to see parents taking their toddlers out there to walk. It's a curvy path up to that section, which is a straightaway with flat ground and the underbrush making a well-defined path. I know people let their kids run up and down it since they can see all the way to end and the kids have the ability to run freely without being out of sight. I know it's probably not going to happen, but I always mentally see a kid running away from his parents down the path, a rustle of brush, a flash of fur, and the sound of little Billy being carried off into the woods. I've hunted quite a bit when I was in my 20s, not so much now. The one that really stands out was when I was walking through unfamiliar woods and I just got the feeling something was watching me. Like something was hunting me and not the other way around. I never saw anything. No tracks, no tufts of fur, nothing to suspect an animal was hunting me, but I just couldn't shake the feeling. Only time I've ever been out in the woods and got that uneasy. A ring of about 8 guys around a deer, blasting away. We saw them from a couple hundred yards. Gave me the chills. I've never been back hunting. Plenty of summertime hiking, but it was gun deer season in northern Y. I was sitting in an open tree stand that was relatively low to the ground. In front of me, to my left was dense shrubbery and to my right, there was an opening before the woods started. All of the sudden, I heard some rustling in the bushes to the left. 2 little fluff balls came tumbling out into the open area. Initially, I had no idea what they were. I was intently focused on them, trying to figure out what animal this was. Then I heard the deepest and scariest growling coming from behind me. I immediately froze. Next thing I knew, I had a mother bobcat circling my tree. It might have only been a minute or 2, but it felt like an eternity. She continued circling the tree, growling at me and never taking her gaze off of me. Finally the cubs decided they were done playing and everyone moved on. I will never forget the sound of that growl and the intensity of the bobcat's eyes staring at me. After I came back in, I told this story to my dad. He seemed rather excited, saying that he hasn't seen any wild bobcats in the area yet. However, I did not feel so lucky about the encounter at the time. Thanks for watching. What would be your response? Leave it in the comments and see what the others say. Please also like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Until next time, take care.